Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a nice Saturday. This is where we left off. I've changed the title from hands-on to architecture because I feel like this video is going to be more similar to ones that we've done in the past, where we go through a section of the Gas City documents in order to understand a particular concept really well. And I feel like that sort of paid off a little bit in the last time we did this because there were these architectural pillars of Gastown. It's sort of, say, low-lying substrate of abstract concepts. And we started a video with session, and we didn't deep dive all of the code that is related to session inside of Gas City, but I think we got a pretty firm handle on what kinds of things are stored by the session, what kinds of inputs and outputs it has, what its purpose is. So the short version of what session is inside of Gas City is it's a wrapper around the communication between Gas City and some source of cognition. And so like usually a command line agent like Claude Code or ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that. And the idea is to abstract away the quirks of all of those different modes so that we can kind of use the session in the same way inside of Gas City. So there's a lot more architectural concepts we could pick, but the one that we started running into at the end of last session was about packs. And particularly, there is a pack that provides a bunch of agents and formula, and you could say like opinionated organizational structure for Gas City that it was intended to re-implement Gastown, the sort of proto project for Gas City. And Gastown has these cute pictures, and there's this essay, and if you haven't read that already, of course, I highly recommend that. We'll just drop that in chat as well. Here we go. This will just take a second to pull up. If you go to Medium and search for Steve Yegi, search for Gastown, we've got the Wasteland, and then we've got Welcome to Gastown. This is the one, this is the place I would start if you're interested in all of this. So this is the first orchestrator that Steve published and felt was good enough to turn into an open source project and show to the world and start writing about. And if you look through this essay, you're going to see a lot of steampunk, like a gas-shaped town essentially. Um, and yes, we've definitely been warned, I guess, that this is intended originally for people who are sort of running into the problems that they were having with having several terminals open and spinning plates as they would talk to agent after agent after agent, all doing separate jobs. And the coordination problems and the mental stack overload was just getting to be too much. And so you go, can I turn this into a system where I'm no longer sort of running around making sure things are working, and I try to get a little bit higher level? And so, this is sort of an illustration of the various people that are trying to do jobs inside of Gastown. We've got polecats who are transient workers. We've got persistent workers. We've got people checking up on people. We've got somebody managing the merge queue. Um, we've got more infrastructure guys. We've got a mayor that's sort of sitting on top of it, and it's sort of like our human entry point into the city. All things that would be kind of familiar if you watched some of these Gas City videos or tried to do it for yourself. And so this was the shape that I guess made the most sense to Steve. That doesn't mean it will make the most sense to you. But it does solve various problems in this sphere, and it is intended to sort of click on all cylinders. So, with that in mind, I asked our mayor, "Hey, what do you think if what could we borrow from this Gastown pack? Can we can we just use it, adopt their whole system, and then add some of the stuff that we've been doing? How would that work out?" Oh, I'm gonna sneeze just a second. I'll probably sneeze on the microphone and just can't help it. There it goes. Okay. Sorry about that. Um, and I'm like, well, we've been adding features of our own, and it doesn't seem like they totally overlap too much with the ones in Gastown. Um, Gastown has this merge queue, and we're sort of recreating it from first principles. So why don't we just adopt the one that the community's already adopted, and then try to adapt our stuff into it? And what if we just kind of replaced you with this mayor? You think that would work? And is there is some pushback. Their mayor is flexible like you is likely overstated. I mean, I think this is a statement that you might make if you hadn't read all those essays and that kind of thing. And certainly, like, I'm not expecting my mayor to know all of this stuff. Um, we don't need these polecats. Um, you know, um, and so it kind of pushes back. What if we could just, re-implement all of their stuff in here? I don't want to assume that the mayor is like me. Until we read their charter, we don't know. Now, this is a funny statement as well because charters are a thing that we made up. It only exists inside of our gas city, inside of Tudor. And we shouldn't expect that we're going to go find charters, mission statements, anything but a prompt for the mayor in Gastown. But sure, let's go ask our gas city oracle about that. Um, and so here's me pushing back again. Let's try and integrate our hard-won lessons with this community pack. And so before we go on and actually look at the documentation for packs, let's just see what it came up with. It exaggerated, yes. Um, Decentralization. Filed some um, Oracle questions. Oracle questions should be city scope. That's funny. Um, is that true? Are we just trying to learn about things for the city? I guess this has been sort of a consequence of the way that we have worked, right? Like, we've been working on this sort of meta feature of creating departments and dispatching, and then we've been working on application. So we've been working on applying that all those lessons and that structure to a particular business problem, creating these puzzle games. And so we're starting to get confused about what belongs where. And I think that it's very cut and dried. If it's puzzle specific, it belongs down in the rig probably. But everything beyond that, it's a little bit vague. Is this a hard-won lesson that we're applying due to the particular implementation of our agents and what we're seeing out of that? Or is it something that generalizes and that really belongs up in the pack? And then we're sort of getting friction from the way that Gas City divides up agents and formulas at the city level. And then there's not the same kind of stuff down at the rig level. I don't seem to be able to create namespaces. I don't seem to be able to pare it down. All right. Let's try this again. Excuse me for a minute. I might be getting some spring allergies. We got some cottonwood in my area, so it sent some questions. And then decentralizing. Yeah. So diving, good place to break for your pack docs dive. Thank you, Mayor. So let's do that. And then we'll be able to evaluate some of the answers that we're likely to get back from the Gas City Oracle. And Gas City Oracle is an agent that we set up to read the Gas City source code and answer questions about it. Okay, so let's go take a look at packs. What that would be, let's see. So we have Gas City. Um, we might have this open in a terminal. I was trying to remember where we looked it up. Yeah, here we are. Okay, docs pack v2. I think this is where I intended to go. Let's try looking at docs pack v2. It seems to use Gastown a lot as an example, and then we can kind of see what we see. With it being in the docs tree as well, it makes me wonder if it's on the main documentation website, which it might be. In which case, it's possible that like the links will be broken on this site. And it was last updated yesterday. It says so. That yesterday might not be yesterday. May 21st, a couple days ago. So we're no later than a couple of days ago on this documentation. And I really don't know why it's taking so long to load this page. Hmm. Nothing's jumping out at me in the performance. Am I blind? Docs, Pack V2? Okay. This went into eng docs at some point. Okay. So 3 days ago it moved out. Does that mean my main branch is out of date? There we go. Okay. Okay. So here we are. All right. Back to normal. README. This directory contains the design notes, rollout ledgers, and historical reconciliation docs. They shouldn't be used as the primary source for authoring a new city or pack. User-facing migration and shareable packs. Okay, so there's a guide. Maybe let's start there. We can return to this in a little bit. This is just, okay. Okay, here we go. A pack's a portable definition of behavior. Agents, templates, providers, formulas, orders, commands, doctor checks, overlays, skills, and other reusable assets. The root pack plus a city toml deployment file and machine local.gc bindings. Separate three concerns. The pack directories, the city toml defines how this deployment runs, and local site bindings and runtime state. there was an old pack system, but new docs should use packv2 and agents/name directories. So we've been creating agents/name directories. Standard directories are loaded by name. Opaque helper files belong under assets. Have we been putting our scripts in assets as we have been building them into our formulas? Let's take a look. So we've created a bunch of formulas that are perhaps specific to our departments, like our game making departments. And so there's a trade-off, right, between having the cognitive agent think really hard and do something and perhaps recreate it from scratch, and having it not think at all, hard and just running a shell script or something like that. And there might be, I guess I'm looking for a formula that has a shell script that we wrote. I use the term we kind of loosely here. Okay. All right. Maybe I should be thinking a little bit bigger. The reason I'm starting a new shell here is we just want to be in this directory. All right. It says that a lot of them use something. Maybe this is the problem. Okay. Tools. Accept work. So we put our stuff in tools, I think. So if I read this right, yeah. There's nothing in assets, but arguably we should be putting our scripts into asset scripts. And there's no tools directory here. And yeah. All right. So we've got agents, formulas, orders are scheduled formulas or scheduled bash commands, that kind of thing. We've got commands, asset scripts. I'm not sure. Oh, no, I'm still not sure. What's the distinction they're trying to make between this and this, or the tools that we made? Skills would be agent skills, like things that have a name and description that can get lazily loaded on demand. MCP is Model Context Protocol. So these are servers that are a little bit more heavyweight. And it's sort of like instead of doing request response type of calls, perhaps you're using one of these to manage an ongoing process that doesn't lend itself to that sort of back and forth. Like if you're managing a dialogue or something stateful, or you're wrapping something really complicated, those might be the times when you use one of these instead of one of these. template fragments is interesting because we were talking about this in other contexts. Like, I'd like to add something to many of my templates, and so that's we would use that for things like how do I accept work? How do I reroute it? Um, that kind of thing. We were talking about a sort of cross-cutting thing to answer Oracle type questions about my knowledge specialty. Okay, a minimal one of a name, a schema, and a version, and some agent defaults. Any agents that are agents are going to get these unless their agent toml overrides this. A minimal agent is a directory with a prompt. That's how all of ours look right now, except that we have added some more stuff. This is for overrides from the pack defaults. Timeouts, sessions, what to do when you're running. What to do. This is sort of like a constructor type step. Prompt file discovery prefers this. Prompt MD and prompt MD temple are accepted for compatibility because I guess people used these for other packs and things in the past. We don't want those to break. We just want them to. We want this to be deprecated and migrate toward this. Packs compose other packs with named imports. That's all right. Imports provenance. So that we can tell Gastown polecats from reviewer polecats. That's not so bad. Local imports use a path relative to the importing pack. Remote imports use source and version constraint. Okay, so this is telling us that we can have our imports on disk, or we could get them from like a remote repository. And presumably, they need to have sort of a standard source, one that respects versions. Maybe they're assuming that all of the imports are going to come from GitHub. Don't know. Set transitive false only when the import is internal to the pack and should not be visible. Meaning that if you import something that imports something else, then you're going to get that something else. A city imports packs at the root pack level and declares deployment details. Here are some root pack. This is the city importing Gastown or this reviewer thing. And then if you're depending on this being here, then you can just sling stuff to the agent that it defines, right? Like this wouldn't work unless you were importing the thing that defines it. Machine local rig paths are site bindings managed by GC. So when we create rigs, I guess we could attach them to our. So we could have done it this way, right? Like we have an agent that was working with the source code for a couple of projects, and when we want to ask questions about it, we go, "Hey, agent that studied those projects, do you know about this and this and this?" And then it sort of write down what it was asked about and that kind of thing. But we could have just added them as rigs into our city. That would have been another option. Rig level imports when only one rig should receive a PAX agents or formulas. Rig scoped identities. So they've made a rig called backend. That's the thing to understand. Yeah, here it is in the file, of course. this can be a little bit confusing if you're like, I'm not sure if this thing is something that Gastown defines or, but no, it's a thing that's, it would have been helpful if they named us like example rig, example rig slash Gastown polecat, example rig slash review. It might have helped if they'd called this like review pack or something like that too. I understand that there's certain like naming conventions that are really helpful to um, hide the source of something. Like, is this a function or an object or whatever? It doesn't matter if it accepts the dot notation to go and get this agent, this definition, then you kind of don't care what sort of thing this is. It just has to conform to the convention that allows you to dereference it in this way. Um, and that can be good in a lot of circumstances where if somebody sets something up to work like a class or look like a class or function that way, but has some sort of magic under the hood or whatever, you as the user are hidden from all of that stuff, or it's all hidden from you. And you can just use it like normal, like you don't know what's going on. Um, okay, hacks can declare sessions that can be independent. For instance, it's sort of like if I don't want to pollute your workspace of agents and sessions, um, can I just declare my own and just use those when I need to do some work? And I guess we're not sure. This gets back to what the mayor was talking to me about. My mayor from Tudor is this opinionated that it's super special now and nobody could possibly do its job. And I go, okay, well, what if I'll just have a gas town mayor and it'll just be scoped to that, and you can continue doing my stuff, my mayor, my Tudor mayor, and the gas town mayor can do gas town mayor stuff. Um, the template's an agent name from the same pack or an imported qualified name. Again, it would be nice to have some examples, like if we carried through um, the reviewer here. Okay, patch. Modify imported agents without redefining them. So this is like, I want to use a different provider than the default provider. I want to use a different timeout than the default timeout. And similarly, um, we can have, instead of city level patches, rig level patches. Formulas and orders. There we go. We don't need to say where the formula directory is. It's conventional. When multiple packs provide the same formula name, the importing pack wins over its imports. And then rig level imports can override city level formulas. So this is like a rule of specificity, right? Like if I have something that's supposed to work in a generic way, and then in a more specific context, I overwrite with a more specific way to do it, then the more specific way is going to overwrite. And it's the same convention that we've had, I think, from the start when we start overloading things. Um, I guess C++ is coming to mind, right? Um, but yeah, similarly, the rig level is more specific than the city, and the rig should override the city. And so it's sort of like we're creating large contexts. And inside of those contexts, we have more specific contexts and more specific contexts. And if we specify anything in the specific context, that should be used. But if we don't, we should fall back to the next context and the next one and the next one until we find something that will satisfy the demand that we made inside of that context. I did not find this all that helpful. you know, it's supposed to tell me, this is the way that this is what gets overridden and what doesn't. these are ways to make everything work together. Here's an example. um, let's try looking at this next one, migrating to pack v next, which would be pack v2. Right. There's a lot of entanglement between the definition of a pack or a city that can be versioned, shared, and used in many contexts. Um, so I have a really specific metaphor in mind for this, which is I've worked at companies in the past that had really good versioning build systems. And the closest that I worked with in the open source sphere was like Maven, right? But you could say, Ruby as well, gem files. And the basic idea of this is that if you want to build something right, you need to know all of the versions of the things that go into it. And then those sort of bubble up to the version of the thing that you are building, right? And if everybody has done this in the same way, then we'll be able to, when we're building an artifact, we'll be able to see what the children were built out of and what they were built out of, all the way down to the bottom, to things that have no dependencies, right? And that declare versions. And so all of those versions sort of stack up to build a particular version. And it can be kind of annoying to specify, oh, this version does kinds of the kinds of things that I want. I want to use it. And there's a sort of weird problem that comes in when, if any of these things changes their dependencies, in theory, you should rebuild the tree all the way up to the top. And then that thing should get a new version. But if you've depended on that thing, how are you supposed to get the new version instead of the old version? And so we have concepts of like major and minor version. We have concepts of depending on a version range or any version that's at least as high as this number, that sort of thing. And so by using sort of numbering conventions and what we call like semantic versioning, right, we can kind of have a sense that, oh, if I'm on the 1.0.x version of something, um, the library authors or the dependency authors are sort of promising that even the small changes that they make and tweaks that they make are going to be down in that X, right? And I might have said, I'll take anything from 1.0, no matter what that X is. And if you're going to make a backwards incompatible change, you better change that 1.0 to something else like 1.1. And then I'll decide freely on my own time whether I want to migrate from 1.0 to 1.1, right? But for as long as it's supported, as long as there keep being changes, I might keep pulling in changes off of the 1.0 line. Right? Trying to simplify that as much as I can in a paragraph or so. And so I could definitely imagine having problems with so many different artifacts as well as sort of these dependency declarations. And when I look at, let's look at our pack file for a second, right? Not a whole lot in here. Let's see. Um, do we have, I might be able to furnish another example. This is an older city, I think, so it might still be on the old one. All right. So you can kind of see that it has this includes, and we'll be able to go find the Gastown pack and that kind of thing. This is all pack V1, I would venture, right? But yeah, if you compare this to the way that dependencies are declared in like um, Node or a gem file or Maven or something like that, um, it leaves a lot to be desired, right? We're not saying that we want Gastown version 1.0x Gastown has not necessarily declared, oh yeah, you should go get you know 1.0.23 and it's made up of this and this and this. And so I've said before on the stream that we're kind of recapitulating the history of the software industry as fast as possible. And so that's the frame that I would put on all of this stuff. A lot of entanglement between versioning, deployment configuration, runtime information that needs to be hidden, right? Um, in point 14.0, a city was kind of a pack, but kind of not, and pack v2 clears that up. A city is defined just like a pack with an additional city toml. Interesting. I mean, the sort of like golden age of cities, right, is that hmm, I guess another digression sort of metaphor. Um, we have this book by this architect called Christopher Alexander, and his book is called A Pattern Language, and it's designs for towns, buildings, and construction. And the gist of the book is that he starts at a very high level, like the world is a bunch of communities, right? And he tries to start breaking down that concept throughout this very long book. And it's not exactly a story or an essay, it's not argumentative. It says that it's describing the way that the world is, or things that have been done in the past, maybe. And so that means that a town has a bunch of parts to it, a bunch of structure inside of it. And if we open up that structure, we'll see smaller things like uh, I haven't read the whole book, but you can say like SimCity, right? Some residential things and some commercial things and industrial things. And those buildings in turn have purposes and relationships in the way that they're laid out in the town. Um, so without getting too, it's very tempting actually to go search for like a pattern language and visualization. I'm sure somebody's done this before. Uh, maybe not for the book itself, but interesting. People are writing papers about it even as we speak. Let's see here. Towns, buildings, construction. This is the book itself, a pattern language. And we're not going to read any of the PDFs that we found. Um, but we would like to be able to. Oh, well, I should be looking for images. I was really looking for like a graph of the book because the book is sort of written in a sort of parent-child um, relationships. One entry points to another entry. Usually things are pointing downward. Um, I can see that this is something I'm going to have to look for on my own time. Um, People should design for themselves their own houses, streets, and communities. Um, 250 patterns are provided for different design problems. And maybe we can find a short example of one. Um, Again, we're not trying to pirate this book. We are trying to like demonstrate how entries are built on entries. This is from Wikipedia. When the patterns are taken together, they form a kind of language, right? and that happens where sort of our current best guess. Here we are, finally. A pattern language has the structure of a network. Each pattern may have a statement that's referenced to another pattern by placing that pattern's number in brackets. So 12 refers to pattern number 12 in the book, community of 7,000, and it's structured as a hypertext. There you go. all that to say, I think that we're trying to think of the city as being composed of certain formats, right? And of course, when you think of composing a city out of forms and formats, the first thing that you should do is think of this book, A Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, because it's talking about how real life cities are composed of forms that have moving parts and relationships between them, um, that have alternatives, perhaps, or parents and children, uh, or design a certain flow that relates different parts of a city one to another, and then zooms in on one of those parts, like what should a municipal park be like, or something like that. Um, and so I guess what I would believe about this is that if you really wanted to do this inside of Gas City, you should provide this sort of format, right? This sort of pattern language. Um, and one thing that you're doing when you're just importing a whole bunch of packs into your city, it's sort of like you have all these templates for buildings. You might have these formulas and workflows are like business processes, right? And so a sort of wild looking city would say, we're just going to do everything in our city. We're going to put a factory next to a park, and we're going to throw the school inside of the factory, and you know, um, and not clearly delineating or referencing each other, right? Just throwing things together in a sense. And it's true that that city might have a lot of options for what to do in it, but that doesn't mean they would work well together. That doesn't mean that it's built to a purpose, that it flows with the geography, or it matches the kinds of community that we want to create inside of that context, right? Uh, and in this computer context of Gas City, right, the geography is all virtual. It's the geography of the mind, it's the geography of the business problem, potentially, that kind of thing. And so you don't just want to import things because they're cool. You don't just want to add people to your city because they are powerful, right? You want to add them because they do a job for you, because they fit in to the community that you're trying to build, or they bring something to the table. And so, and the reason for that is that the more complexity we have to manage, the obviously the more powerful we could become, but also the less focused we could become. And things that detract from the focus, that take up resources but don't sort of pay their way, right? Like the more specialized and focused we make our city, the harder it is for some generic function to break in and contribute right away. Portable definitions will be in pack, and deployment information will be in city. There's a third layer, .gc, that matters to the model, but it's not usually something that the user would pay attention to. It's sort of like implementation details when someone is constructing a pack. And we're interested in that because we are trying to construct a pack. In a sense, maybe, depending on how this goes. Uh, we're trying to discuss the specialization and routing kind of pack. And then there's some migrations from the old way to the new way. We skipped all of that. We just haven't done an old style city. Like the tutorial is taking us forward in a fine way. And the tutorial is kind of a bare minimum kind of city. Uh, okay. The newer ones, so we're definitely past this. We're on Gas City, like 1.0 point something. Later, centers packed HOML, named imports, and convention-based directories. Um, and I think if we were going to skate to where the puck was going, we should just say builds the dependency closure of the versioned pack, something like that. And so if we were going to define our city, right? This is the old one. This is the city of Ravens. But here's the here we go. This city, right? Its artifacts, right? All this stuff. Where is the versioning, right? Is this it? You know, is this it? We do have a pack with a schema version number. Is this all the versioning that we get in Gas City? Uh, or should we be declaring it more explicitly? We should be able to easily find an example here. How about I guess Ruby is probably what I'm kind of looking for, but here's some example, right? Just to pick a random library. This doesn't have a gem file. I guess I should just be looking in the gem repository. Here we are. So we'll probably be able to take one of many libraries here. Let's try this. Here we go. A framework agnostic way to render logic-free views. So this is like a templating library where if you put double curly braces and things, and then you marry those inside of like a web page, for instance, and you say the text that's going to go here is whatever the value of the variable, author name is, and then you marry that to an environment that specifies the author name variable, and it will render that text into that template. Yeah. Break your things into an HTML template and a Ruby class. So um, this is how you can specify that you want to use it in your Ruby library, and then it itself is going to do the same thing, right? It has these dependencies that it is also specified, and those things also have dependencies. Um, so just if you're curious, um, what are the dependencies of bundler? It has a lot. Rake has a lot. You can kind of see rake is here twice. These arrows should kind of point to each other. Um, it's kind of funny that mustache depends on bundler. That depends on an older version of mustache, but that is how it works, right? Like this isn't the snake isn't eating its tail, right? It's not like a bundler depends on the thing that depends on it, right? We disallow that kind of stuff. And we can just kind of continue. Like, I don't know what all of these libraries do. We assume this is for testing, something like that. This, and you can see that there are different versions of this as well. Like mini test, we need one that's at least this high, and it's actually this high. um, it depends on a much newer version of RDoc, and RDoc itself, an older version. Um, it's kind of a funny thing that's happening there. But you could imagine that if we kept expanding this tree until we got all the way down the dependencies, that there would be a lot of detail in here. And just like I mentioned, we're trying to say um, it said greater than 0, meaning it has to exist, I guess. And and here is picked, sorry, version 2.15.1. Yeah, so just like I mentioned, there could be different ways to depend on um, versions of libraries. Make sure it's one of these three ones. Make sure it's at least 0. Make sure it's at least 4 and less than 7. That might be important for compatibility reasons. Like if there was a breaking change in 7, then mini test of this line doesn't want to migrate to it yet, etc. Um, and so against that picture, this looks very rudimentary, right? uh, it makes sense in a context where everyone is sharing their packs and people are depending on versions of versions of versions, that we should avoid circular dependencies and packs that are their own grandpas and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, that's not the level that we're at here. Let's see, migrating. Yep, split up pack and city toml. I guess we've got rig specific composition and patches. Let's see. I think we kind of saw this when I showed you the two different possibilities, like the old city and the new city configuration. We saw this difference. You need to run a gc import install or a gc import check to get new versions of your remote packs. Move into agent directories. And I think I mentioned too, right, that since we have just a huge flat city, let's look at it again, right? And keep adding more. Um, some of these guys have very generic jobs. Um, the Beads Oracle and the Gas City Oracle. Anybody could use them if they wanted to look up something about Gas City or Beads. The Mayor is also supposed to be very generic. But then some of these guys are specific to a couple of different rigs that I made. And it would make sense if these were split out into, um, an agent of that, you could say pack, but, you know, and I think that there was, right, when we looked in the documentation just a minute ago, right, we were looking at a rig could pull in a pack, and then the agents in that pack would be scoped to that pack. Right, this kind of thing. Right here. Rig level imports. And so arguably, if we had structured all of our stuff as a pack and then imported the puzzle agents only under the puzzle rig, then we'd be referring to them slightly differently. We'd be kind of using the advantages of this namespace. But when we're just defining our agents inside of the city, they're all up at the city level and they haven't been organized like this. And so one thing that we could do to reorganize our city is to see, you can see these older ones, right, from a different rig. They should probably be defined as a pack and then included inside of that rig. And very similarly, um, these guys. All of my new friends who are puzzlers, puzzle makers, um, down at the city. This guy is specific to our department and routing scheme, and it's probably also a pack, right? Um, but we want to give some of the routing decisions and templates to these guys. So we're kind of weaving an interesting web here. We might want to start drawing stuff. Um, I'll try and figure out a way. I think that there's a way for me to show my tablet on stream, so we could actually just draw straight onto the tablet. I'll try and figure that out later. But yeah, the ins and outs of the things that we want to do, right? They have to do with assigning work out to specialists, making those specialists work with artifacts that they're sharing with one another. Perhaps they're putting work in each other's queues. Perhaps they're responding to one another and playing off of one another. And so it's not immediately obvious where to put this feature or that feature, um, or how to do aspect oriented things that cross across all of them, how to namespace them appropriately to be against a rig instead of the city. Um, so yeah, we're definitely going to have to delve into this some. And reading these documents about packs, uh, I don't think is giving us the level of detail that we need. So we probably will have to return to like the engineering notes and try to understand how they work in order to understand how best to use them. And then maybe we'll be able to make some suggestions about how to improve the situation. Okay, cool. I think that's where we'll stop for now. I'm gonna head out and do some other stuff, but hopefully that plane isn't too loud for you. Sorry, I just tuned them out. I've lived here like most of my life. Um, but yeah, we'll get into this more. I don't think we're done by any means with this. So we'll continue deep diving into the pack engineering notes and try to figure out how to take all of the stuff that we've been making at these different levels for our meta city, for the different packs that we've got, and the department work routing. Uh, Try and figure out how to structure that appropriately so that we can bring it into our city in a well motivated and versioned way, and then start trying to figure out how to layer in multiple packs if we want to take advantage of some of the features in the Gastown pack. So yeah, hopefully I'll get back to this today. But if not, we'll pick up right from here next time. So yeah, have a good one for now. See you later.